Oh, so good. Welcome back to another video on my channel. Today I really wanted to talk to you guys about a book that I just finished at midnight last night, and it was Eleanor Park by Rainbow Rowell. This book, I have to say that on my Goodreads rating out of 5 I gave it 4 stars. Yeah. So the book is about two characters and it kind of alternates from both of their perspectives. The first character is called Eleanor and she lives in the same area as the other character. It's kind of like a known neighbourhood, and she lives with her mum, her stepdad and her younger siblings, and her stepdad is pretty aggressive. He's kind of an alcoholic, and her dad left when she was much younger, and so it's kind of her and the younger kids, and she's always kind of trying to stay out of the way of the stepdad. He's not a very nice guy. The mum is quite passive and kind of just puts up with it, and it's kind of an abusive relationship, but Eleanor is only 16, so she can't really do a lot about it. Park is the other character. He lives in the same area as Eleanor, but his family's completely different. His parents are together, they are in love and happy, and he really likes comic books and music, and they meet one day when they both catch the bus at the same time, and Eleanor is the new girl on the bus. That pretty much sums up the story without spoiling it, so if you want to avoid spoilers, this is where you stop watching. I'm going to spoil a bit more of the story and talk a little bit more about it for those of us who have read it. So, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the characters and things that I liked about them. I really didn't like them when I first started reading them. It took me a while to kind of get on their team and warm up to them, if that makes sense. I didn't connect with Eleanor or Part in a lot of ways because they just had different kind of lives than I've had, and it's fine. Like, many characters, like, no one's the same, we're all different, it's beautiful. And so I really liked a new, fresher kind of story with characters that I feel like I hadn't read before. Eleanor, I found it really interesting. I think the way she was talked about, how she dressed and how she wore like fishing lures as earrings, and she always wore clothes that didn't fit. Obviously there were money problems in her family, and it's kind of like, it's almost like other characters don't really notice. It's like they think she decides to dress the way she does. She dresses quite like out there and wears like a lot of men's clothes, and you know, wears like men's ties around her wrists or in her hair, and just puts like crazy things in her hair. She's got crazy red hair, and she says herself that she's fat, but nobody else really kind of says that. Like, I think she does get bullied quite a bit, and people would call her Big Red because she's got red hair, but she isn't. I don't really think she's big. I think it's just how she feels about herself. She's just quite insecure. Park is kind of just like completely opposite. Like, he's also quite insecure about himself and unsure of who he is, and kind of just keeps his head down and does what he needs to do. But he's really different. He comes from a completely different background, and when they sat together for the first time on the bus, it was very awkward and kind of uncomfortable. Even as the reader, we're kind of going like, this is so awkward. So it's really interesting that they didn't like each other in the beginning really at all. And Eleanor is totally closed, and Park is just kind of looks angry, and they're both kind of just not really connecting at all. So as the story does go on, they do actually start to get to know each other, and it's beautiful because it starts as a friendship that develops later on into a romance, and it's a lot more accurate to how relationships as young people really do start. You know, it's not always just like, I liked him and he liked me and then we were going out. There's all this kind of like insecurity between them and from their different perspectives that they grow to really, you know, start to like each other after they've got to know each other, not just from the outset. It wasn't this kind of immediate connection. So many of the characters just made me so angry because it was like accurate about life, because I work with young people, and so I could almost be like, oh my goodness, Richie the stepdad is like so many other stepdads out there in the world, and I feel like so many young people could connect to this book because of Eleanor's story. I was even talking to a friend of mine who has been reading this at the same time as me, and she said, oh my goodness, it was like reading my childhood. And it made me so sad, but it's so true, because a lot of people's parents are in abusive relationships, whether or not it's physical abuse or it's like manipulation and verbal abuse and the way we treat each other and all of that stuff. It's still abuse. And so it was really, really interesting, and I found the relationships between the parents was very, very interesting, particularly between Richie and Eleanor's mum. Was a really strained relationship. Eleanor had been kicked out before, basically for something so stupid, and because Richie just lost his temper. The whole storyline of somebody writing the really mean and vulgar messages on her textbooks is really interesting. The whole plot twist of it really being Richie, just like, like I physically gasped, like, whoa, I didn't see it coming. Even though Richie was like a complete dirtbag, I didn't see it coming that he would have gone out of his way to write awful messages on Eleanor's book. And that stuff started to fall apart more towards the end, and Eleanor had to run away from home. It kind of made me almost glad that it happened, because it was one of the last things that made her really leave. And you know she had to leave eventually because the relationship was so strained. And I was almost scared that something awful was going to happen to her before she was able to leave. One of my favourite moments in the book, I have a few. One of my favourite moments is because Eleanor gets a makeover done by Park's mum, and she does her hair and she does her makeup and all of that kind of stuff, and it's this kind of awkward, cute moment, and Eleanor's kind of fighting against it because it's kind of stripping her a bit of what she defines herself, and her identity has kind of been wrapped up in the way she dresses and the way her hair is really crazy and things like that. And when Park's mum really kind of tones all of that down and makes her like look beautiful, like conventionally beautiful, she doesn't feel beautiful anymore. One of my favourite moments is when Park puts on the eyeliner and goes to school and does his hair all crazy, because it's almost like we think that Park is the one that would be the bigger influence on Eleanor, because she's so kind of closed and like kind of aggressive and hard and things like that, but she's really edgy and stuff like that. But it actually works the other way around, and Eleanor is the one that really changes something in Park. He really starts to stand up for himself. He like backflip and kick some guy in the head to defend Eleanor one day. It's like something in Park really changes over their relationship progressing. When he puts on the eyeliner and he looks in the mirror, and Eleanor sees him and she says he looks just like him but with the volume turned up, and that's what he thought about Eleanor when she got the makeup and everything done. His dad was like, you look like a girl, but he didn't care and he wore it anyway. And it was almost like Eleanor opened up a door where Park could experiment with who he was and try new things and really step a little bit closer to being his true self. That was really beautiful. That was probably one of my favourite moments. Loved Park's mum as well, and how it's written in the book, the way she would say it, like she doesn't call Eleanor Eleanor, she's like Eleanor. I have one more thing I have to say. If you've read this book, the ending though, Eleanor goes to her uncle's house in Minnesota, and so she's hours and hours living away now, and they haven't heard from each other in ages, and Park sent letters every day, and it was very notebook. And then finally, it's been like over a year or something like that since they've heard from each other, or since she moved, and he gets a postcard from Eleanor. The last thing we hear of these two characters who we've got to know and fall in love with, this is what we get. Eleanor had written him a letter. It was a postcard, just three words long, and that's the end of the book. What? And it's very important, if you do read this book, that you make sure you read the little niblet of knowledge at the end, because Rainbow Rowell actually explains the three words. She doesn't say what they are, but she says that it's time in the story that we've been inside these characters' heads for so long that it's time that we left them to live their lives. And her mother read the book and was like, sweetheart, you have to tell me what the 3 words are. I'm your mother. And she was like, no. Eleanor is always portrayed as the character that would need more help, that would kind of almost need another, you know, in a relationship she would be the more dependent one, but it's revealed more and more and more that Park is the one that is more dependent on Eleanor, and he needs her. And the whole time Park says over and over and over again, I love you, Eleanor, I love you, I love you. He says it over and over again, and she never ever says it back. So the easiest thing to think would be that Eleanor finally sent the letter and the 3 words were I love you, but it's been over a year and she lives in Minnesota. I don't know. I just don't know. I can't imagine them getting back together. I feel like, and Eleanor being the one to instigate it, because I feel like Park always needed Eleanor more than Eleanor needed Park. And I was so frustrated because I read it and finished it at midnight, and I just had to lay there and think about those 3 words for so long. I couldn't sleep for hours because it was all I could think about. Anyway, I did love this book. I gave it 4 stars. I didn't give it 5 because it was really, really good, but it wasn't great. And I think there are so many other Rainbow Rowell books, and I loved the style of writing. It was so accurate from being a young person. Totally reminded me of the first time I fell in love, in a beautiful way, not in a heartbreak, oh it was so sad kind of way, but like a way that was beautiful and lovely to remember. So I totally enjoyed it for that. I gave it 4 stars. Let me know what you think, especially about the last 3 words. What did Eleanor write to Park in the postcard? And I will see you guys in my next video.